Hi everyone, it's Michael, and it's time for the July 2021 Orchid Collection Update. So many good things are happening right now, and that's thanks in large part to the fact that I've actually been home this month to care for the plants and to respond to their needs in real time, so that is super exciting. I'm seeing plants that have never ever bloomed for me before going into spike, which is so exciting. So a lot to share this month. Now, before I jump in, I do want to show you, Justin started this really interesting project, which at first really agitated me because he was clipping live blooms off of my plants. So obviously I didn't like that, but he wanted to dehydrate and preserve them in resin, and the whole process just sounded messy and gross to me, but he's been doing it, and let me just show you. Look at what Justin has been doing. He has been collecting and dehydrating my orchid blooms and then casting them in resin, and look how interesting they are. This is my Banfield Mystic Maze. This is my Epidendrum Hybrid Rose. They're so bizarre and beautiful. Aren't those unexpectedly so cute? Now I keep looking at my collection and I'm like, well, how would you do a Cycopsis? Like, could you do that one? I don't know, it's just really interesting. In regard to my current care system, nothing has changed this month from the previous month, so I'm continuing to flush all of the orchid containers once to twice a month. In between those flushes, I am watering with a dilute nutrient solution that consists of Dynagro and CalMag. I am misting the plants every single morning and sustaining a strong source of moving air, which is an overhead fan. And that's my system, and it's working great. So without further lead-in, let's just go ahead and take a look at the plants that have something new, different, and interesting happening this month. Jumping in with number 3 in the collection, this is my Wiltonara Aloha Sparks. And you can see this one is just beginning to exit its bloom cycle. It had a really good long run. And these are actually some of the blooms that Justin is preserving in resin right now. Now, one of the interesting things about this type of plant is it has this tendency every so often to produce secondary branches right at the end of the bloom cycle and then have almost a smaller second spurt. I don't know how else to describe it, but I do think it's noteworthy, and that's probably what's going to happen here. So I will not immediately clip this off, and we'll just continue to monitor it. Moving on to number 4 in my collection, this is the Oncostele Everglades Elegance Nancy Lee, and this one actually has a new owner. Congrats, Danielle. I hope you love this plant. And the timing couldn't be better because this one is just so eager to be repotted, and I didn't want to have to unpot it and divide and do all of those things if it wasn't going to be its final home. So I'm so happy it's on its way to you. Danielle, you're going to do a great job with this one, but just look how vigorous and eager it is to grow. It's so happy. It's so well adjusted, and you can see the new pseudobulb just beginning to peek out as it matures. Moving on to number 11 in the collection, my Cycopsis Mendenhall Hildos. This one just continues to be such a stunning powerhouse, constantly blooming, a sequential bloomer. You can see that the other two have just dropped their old blooms and beginning to produce others. So I'm super excited because I can see this new pseudobulb at the base here maturing, and for the very first time it is putting out root growth outside of the container. So this one is getting quite sizable. I don't know how I plan to liberate it from the container when it is time to repot, but I'm gonna avoid it as long as possible because I just do not want to disrupt this beautiful cycle. Now on to number 16 in the collection. This is my Catasetum Dapper Dots Nicolasa Tavares. This one has just given me so much to think about, but you can see the new growth coming in. It's not quite as sizable as the last year's growth, but it is still continuing to put down new roots, new leads. So I'm not sure how big this will get, but we will see. This is its first season growing after being divided. Now, I did see that there were these little nodules starting, and I was wondering if they might be keikis, and I was totally right. You can see how they've developed. Now, I generally move with pretty swift intensity and urgency when I see keikis on my other plants to remove them and get them repotted, but I'm not quite sure how I want to proceed with this guy because it doesn't seem to be struggling. I'm just not quite sure where it's going. Now on to number 25 in the collection. This is my Epidendrum Green Hornet, and just such a consistent bloomer, such a stunner, but also so unruly and so eager to be divided or get out of the pot. Look at it. It is just so well established that on both sides of the container, it is just pushing out more and more roots, more and more growths. Now, I want to divide this really badly, and I eventually will, but I just keep stalling because I knew that if I waited, that I was gonna start to produce a secondary sequential bloomer. And I think that I might actually have 3 all at once here, and that's just gonna be so beautiful. So sometimes I just don't wanna interrupt the process. I mean, imagine 3 spikes on here just giving me all of these blooms. I will be elated. So I'm just gonna continue to wait this one out, but we'll see. Now on to number 31 in the collection. This is my Odontoglossum Wild Willy Pacific Bingo, and it's super vigorous, it's super happy and healthy, and it's just beginning to produce a mature pseudobulb. So, like clockwork, it is also producing a new flower spike. Now, this was just purchased on the Orchid store. Congratulations, Natalie. I hope you love it. But I'm obsessed with this plant. It has the most fragrant, delicious blooms, so I really, really hope you enjoy growing it. Now on to number 36 in the collection. I'm gonna have to take a few steps back so you can really understand the scale and the scope of this plant. This is my Fredclarkeara SVO After Dark Black Pearl, and just look how gigantic it is. It has had a very successful grow season, the most successful I've ever had, and just look at it in comparison to last year's growth. The pseudobulb it's produced is huge. It's absurd. It's like, it really is. I can't even explain it. It's like an arm. And the leaves are just so healthy and so vigorous and beautiful and waxy. It really is, you know, I haven't even seen the blooms yet, but this is such a joy to grow because the plant itself is so impressive. Jumping to number 66 in the collection, this is my Brassavola venosa, and probably one of the greatest sources of joy for me this month. This one is putting out a flower spike for the very first time. I did not buy this plant in bloom, and I am just so caught off guard by the bud. I know what the blooms look like from Googling this plant, but I didn't really understand the size of the bloom because, look, relative to my finger, it's a very sizable pod. And I didn't know that, so I'm really excited to see this open up. Now, I do think it's noteworthy that I recently transitioned this from water culture, where it was doing fine but not thriving, to semi-hydroponics, and just so quickly it acclimated. It's putting out tons of new green root tips. It just seems to prefer semi-hydroponics. So that's the way I'm gonna continue to cultivate this, but I'm just so excited to see it go into bloom. And last but certainly not least, I'm gonna show you number 67 in my collection, my Epidendrum Hybrid Rose. And this one is, again, a really stunning sequential bloomer. It is very persistent and insistent on blooming, and I just love that about it. But what I wanted to showcase here is I did finally convert this to semi-hydroponic. It had a very similar journey to number 66. It was doing okay in water culture, but it really just wanted to stabilize in the container with medium. So when I take you into the root system, you can see how many branches it produced immediately after conversion. So I think that's a really positive sign. I think this is just gonna get happier and healthier, and I bet I will have multiple spikes in sequential bloom shortly. And with that, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, as always, for choosing to spend a little time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to support one another in the comment section because I'm so seldom available to do so. Don't forget to click subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Mwah!